was very, very interesting that the head of Joseph Stalin's secret police said, "Show me the man and I'll show you the crime." They just make up crimes for whoever they want to. When they have a political opponent, they just make up the crime and put him in jail.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Headlines. I'm your host, Jay, and this is The Objective Podcast. I want to thank you all for tuning in today. I am humbled and honored to have your ear. I don't intend to keep you too long. I try to aim for 15 minutes, hopefully less. We do have a lot to cover today, so we will get right into it. But before we do, if you folks have any questions, concerns, if you disagree with me on any points and you want to kind of discuss our different ideologies, email me at theobjectivepodcast@gmail.com. I have Instagram. Again, it's The Objective Podcast. And what else do I have, folks? Oh, yes, a YouTube channel. Depending on whether you're listening to me on SoundCloud or YouTube, just know that I have both of those, both under The Objective Podcast. Okay, so the quote for today was actually supposedly said by Beria. And he was the head of Joseph Stalin's secret police in the old Soviet Union. He said, "Show me the man and I'll show you the crime." Show me the man and I'll show you the crime. This is very, very, very relevant to our topic today. As a matter of fact, I believe I will name this podcast, this episode, "Show Me the Man and I'll Show You the Crime." Listen in to understand how this all ties in together. So one of the biggest things in the news cycle this past week was the Comey hearing. James Comey would be testifying in the U.S. Senate discussing a wide range of topics, but specifically on the Russia-Trump administration collusion, and also touching on the scenario, or I should say circumstances, around his firing. I watched it. It was about 2 hours, 45 minutes. I actually watched it at work. I was afforded the opportunity to do that, and I was lucky to be able to do that. And I really did enjoy watching this hearing. And so what I did, because I want to stay on time and I know that I can ramble on and on, I set some top points that I want to go over with you today. And there's so much, like I could go on for like an hour on just talking about this stuff, but I think it's important that we try to keep it concise. So here we go. The first point that you need to understand. And if you folks haven't actually listened to the Comey hearing, the most recent one in the U.S. Senate, I strongly advise you and suggest you do that. So the first point is that James Comey was testifying under oath. This means that if he is lying, or if he is proven to be lying, he can be criminally charged. This obviously increased the jeopardy. But when you look at it this way, that in a court of law, when you are brought to court on a criminal matter, or even a civil matter, right, there are consequences for being untruthful, yet still people are untruthful and they are consequently charged with perjury. So it's important to know that there was some sort of jeopardy for untruthfulness. Okay, so he was under oath. The second point is that Comey makes it clear. This is probably one of the most important points to this whole Trump-Russian collusion narrative. So Comey makes it clear through his sworn testimony that Trump is not under investigation and that the media has been disseminating these stories and they have been purveying false news. Very important, folks. Even Chris Matthews of MSNBC, he said that the Russia-Trump collusion narrative came apart, quote unquote, came apart with the Comey testimony. A lot of Democrats have been trying to use this testimony as a victory, as vindicating their previously held positions. But they obviously have not been watching the same Comey hearing that all of us have been watching. Number 3, Comey states that the president of the United States said to him in private, "I hope you can let it go." Those are the quotes. "I hope you can let it go," when referring to the Flynn investigation. Now, folks, this is the crux of the mainstream media's obstruction of justice argument and their claim. But it's important to understand this is where that narrative is destroyed. The president has the legal authority. This is very important. The president, in and of himself, within his authorities, the broad range of his authorities, he has the power to request that any investigation be dropped or instigated as long as this request is constitutional. The reason why the mainstream media is so worked up about this is because they believe that they will find evidence of collusion if they continue to dig and dig and dig, despite there being no evidence of collusion up to date. Senator Feinstein has been asked on 3 occasions, 2 of them by Wolf Blitzer, is there any evidence of collusion? And she, being a Democrat, she said no. Both times. The answer has not changed. So it's important also to know on this point that in order for there to be a criminal investigation, generally speaking, of a person, there must be a crime that was committed. Okay? Here's an example. So the police stop you. You're walking on the sidewalk. The police stop you, and they begin to investigate you for a general crime. They had no reason to stop you, but they stop you on the road, and they begin to investigate you to see what crimes they can find. This is unconstitutional, and this is exactly what the Democrats are doing now. So my question to you, folks, my listeners, what is the crime? Is the crime that the president and his campaign colluded with Russia to skew the American democratic system? It's always said that the more outrageous the accusation is, it requires an equally outrageous articulation and justification for that accusation. It requires an equally, or even in some cases, a more outrageous articulation or more extreme articulation and justification. You cannot just make certain claims, certain outrageous claims, without having some sort of articulation or justification for it. And we are yet to see that outrageous and extreme articulation. I believe when thinking objectively that we can agree. I believe that people on both sides of the political aisle can agree that assuming that Comey was being truthful about this conversation, if this conversation did in fact take place, where the president cleared the room and it was only Comey and the president, and then he says to him, I hope you can let this go, this investigation. We can agree that this is inappropriate. Whether it is inappropriate or not, according to the policies that govern the executive branch when interacting with the judicial branch, whatever the case may be, I believe that it isn't very appropriate. But I will say this. It's a hop, skip, a jump, and a plane ride away from being criminal, from being obstruction of justice. That is such an embarrassing stretch, and it really shows the desperation of the Democrats. My final point is one of the takeaways that I had from this entire hearing. It was actually Marco Rubio's questioning. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of Rubio, especially during the campaign. I really didn't resonate with him. I didn't feel that he had what it takes. I felt that he was kind of a talking head, right? He had a lot of prepared points and he would kind of just spurt them. There's no real passion. It just didn't seem really believable to me. But he does have my respect. I don't think that he's a man that lacks integrity. I don't think he's a man that doesn't deserve my respect. I'm just saying that he didn't really resonate with me. Neither did he resonate with a lot of the voters, obviously. And what he said, listen, and folks, this is so important. He said, the investigation, it's full of leaks. All right. You're hearing more from anonymous sources in the media from anonymous leaks to the media. You're hearing more about this investigation from the media than you are from certain hearings, congressional hearings, the hearings in the U.S. Senate. You're hearing more from leaks. But it's interesting because he said, why is it all that the leaks are damning to the president? Why hasn't it been leaked that the president has not been under investigation, even though that has been known within the intelligence community? Let me play the clip so you can hear it.
You know, this investigation is full of leaks left and right. I mean, we've learned more from the newspapers sometimes than we do from our open hearings, for sure. You ever wonder why, of all the things in this investigation, the only thing that's never been leaked is the fact that the president was not personally under investigation, despite the fact that both Democrats and Republicans and the leadership of Congress knew that and have known that for weeks?
I don't know. I find matters that are briefed to the Gang of Eight are pretty tightly held, in my experience.
And this is the center of my scrutiny when it comes to this investigation. Only leaks damning to the president have been leaked and injected into the news cycle 24 hours a day. But nothing that vindicates the president. This is because there is a narrative. There's no getting away from it, folks. There's a narrative to destroy the Trump presidency. Democrats and the mainstream media, they have chosen to commit political and credibility suicide in hopes that they can possibly outlast the president of the United States in this bloodbath that we call politics today. After a historical loss and multi-millions in campaign funds and donations being given to the Hillary campaign, after revelations surfacing that Hillary and the DNC collude to undermine the democratic process by plotting the compromise of Bernie Sanders, after revelations of presidential debate questions being leaked to Hillary before the debates by Donna Brazile, after scandal upon scandal upon scandal, only resulting in the loss of an honestly crude and unapologetic businessman who is able and capable and proven that he can make a real change. The Democrats are in a place of embarrassment and desperation to save their brand. They have two choices. Understand, they had two choices after that loss they took. They could either start new and reshape the Democratic Party by staying true to liberal principles such as freedom of speech and liberty for all. Or they can decide to try to level the playing field by flooding the news cycle with untenable, anonymous sources and baseless claims that don't stand the test of judicial scrutiny. And I think now if you flip on the TV and go to some of those mainstream media news outlets, you can determine what path they chose to go. Maria said, "Show me the man, and I'll show you the crime." It's my hope and my prayer that our judicial system, our politics, do not disintegrate to that level of scrutiny or lack thereof, where just because you dislike a person, just because you dislike their ideology, just because you dislike the way they carry themselves, you can subject them to unconstitutional investigations, unconstitutional scrutiny. This is what we must fight to avoid. Thank you so much for listening. May it be our objective to be objective. Have a good night.